Mega Man. Hello, welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person. And today I want to talk to you about Mega Man 5 for the Game Boy. So stuff up front. This is actually, because it's the 5th Game Boy installment, with the Roman numeral V, not the number 5. Roman numeral 5, however you want to say it. It is not to be confused with the NES game. I played it on the 3DS, Virtual Console version, not the physical copy, if that makes a difference. I think it might, because I believe it has Super Game Boy support for like extra colors and stuff. I don't know if the other ones had that or not, to get extra stuff with it, but I think there's some extra, like, it looks better on the Super Game Boy, I think. Something like it might be enhanced for that, but I don't know. Also, it's the 5th Game Boy installment, so it would be probably a good idea for you to know about the other Game Boy installments by now, either through my reviews or your own research, or just be familiar with Mega Man, I suppose. But this one also kind of like is tied into those for a bit, so it would make more sense if you knew those going into this. And also there's a written review you can check out before, after, or instead of this video review at hubworldhq.com, or just clicking on the link in the description. And I think that's everything we need to really dive into beforehand. Now let's get into circa the hand. Mega Man 5 does something pretty different than the other 4, in that it does not take bosses or really direct elements from Mega Man 5 and 6 like you'd expect, like all the other ones did, like with the two, split like that. Instead, this one actually is an all new thing. It also starts with a little plot thing happening this time. You don't even have to. It's before the title screen this time too, and basically what happens is, it's been like months after like the last attack. It's like Dr. Wily failed 4 times or whatever. Referencing the other Game Boy games, and it's like, people had forgotten about him, and then all of a sudden, like, this weird dude from the robot from space comes down from space and basically kicks Mega Man's ass, and then like Mega Man has to be reprogrammed or whatever, like rebuilt with like this new arm that like changes his charged shot into like shooting his fist out at enemies, which is apparently a ton stronger than shooting the blast of whatever he normally shoots out, I guess. And we hear that these are called the Star Droids, and they're starting to take over and destroy things. And it's like, why did they come back? And it's like, you gotta stop them and find it out in Mega Man. And then it's like, you start the game. You get a little bit of exposition stuff from Dr. Light as well, who in this game, by the way, is called Dr. Light. So, I mean, I don't know, that's a very small thing to note, but I was kind of glad about that. And then you start playing kind of like you normally would. I mean, a lot of stuff is pretty standard by this point. You've got the level select, you can pick between the 4 bosses, which are the Star Droids this time, and they are named after planets. A lot of their stages are kind of themed around space and things like that. There's some, you fight, there's the first 4 you can beat in any order, then you have to go to like a sub-boss thing, and then you can fight another 4 in any order, and then there's the last set of levels, and, like, passwords and a few cutscenes between, you know the drill. You have the new charged shot, like I mentioned, but you still got the charged shot, your regular shots, you slide, you jump, you run. I mean, it's Mega Man. There's the the lab with collecting the P chips. You have E tanks, S tanks, W tanks, the energy balancer. You have mini E tanks, You have a few other power-ups in the lab. I mean, a lot of this, like Rush is back, and you like, I don't know, like Rush with Rush Coil and Rush Jet. A lot of this is returning stuff. Some of it is new. Obviously, all the stages and the bosses and the levels are new. Some new mechanics within the levels, like doing this different like gravity stuff, doing places where there's like fixed gravity and places where there's just like less gravity. There's some like stuff where like it can slow you down, and just a lot of little things in there thrown in that are like maybe similar to elements you've seen before, but still kind of new. The charge shot is new, and that's a thing to kind of get used to, is that it shoots across the screen, it hits enemies, and it can hurt them on the way out and on the way back. It doesn't go all the way across the screen, but, so it's not like a normal charge shot with that. But you can do that, and it comes back to you, so you can kind of manipulate where that goes if you move. There are a few power-ups for that in the lab, which are new. One of which allows you to use your charged-up fist to grab far-off items and pull them to you. Another one that allows you to grab onto enemies, and certain enemies, not all enemies can you do this to, but you can latch onto some enemies and then like keep either holding the button or keep tapping it rapidly to hit them multiple times, with like have the fish like latch on and keep hitting them to do more damage to them. Those are things you can get. You have a new companion now that you start off with. It's a robotic cat called Tango, who, when you have Tango up, basically you do a charged shot and shoot, and then Tango appears and then bounces around and tries to hit enemies, running also on an ammo meter. In the second set of stages, there's a collectible thing that goes on in those, but you don't, like I said, all the bosses, boss weapons are new too, that's the thing, so you have to learn new fights and new weapons, new stages, all that. That's all kind of gone into one, and new music for it all, and everything as well. Anyways, in the second set of stages, there are collectibles, and there's jewels in each of the levels. You might have to go back and use someone's power to go an alternate path in those levels. Sometimes for other power-ups, sometimes for shortcuts, sometimes for the secrets that are like the jewels. If you get all 4 of those, you then can go back to the lab and create the I forget what it's called exactly, but you get an item that will have the power or the amount of ammo you use whenever you use a special weapon. There's also a couple other upgrades to the Mega Buster, the Buster Arm, whatever it was called. The Mega Arm, I forget. And it's gonna probably have said it on the screen already, but whatever. Beyond 2, you can get from the shop, or the lab, I guess, are basically, if you do the thing again where you die enough time and continue enough times, you'll get an upgrade which makes the shots of both your regular shot and your charge shot go faster. They just move across the screen a lot faster. And then if you do that again, you actually get a second one for it. That, I don't know if it does anything to the regular shots at that point, but for the charge shot, it shoots a lot faster. It goes all the way across the screen now. They're also, once again, like, those will go away if you turn off the game. So you have to re-get them if you do that. It's I guess another new thing. Essentially, is just the idea that it seems like, it's like, oh, like, there's not like Dr. Wily's robots and everything behind you. It's a bunch of these unknown star droids instead of just the standard master robots and that kind of stuff. And I will say I respect a lot of stuff about this. I think a lot of the things here are good decisions. A lot of these are good decisions. It's cool that they made this more of a new game, because it's more appealing, I think, to people who had maybe played the NES titles and are like, I don't know if I want to have rehashes of bosses and stage ideas. And so this one is probably the most unique of them because of that. It takes in a lot of those elements into here, you know, like they did a really good job with the shop. Um, that was already introduced for the Game Boy ones. I thought that was done pretty well. I guess because there's a couple more upgrades and things to get in there. The lab, the shop, I'm sure I've flipped those around a million times. And like that just makes it a little more useful to get the P chips. The P chip idea, anyway, is kind of a neat like thing to make the game feel a little bit more elongated and give you a reason to be grinding out enemies, especially if you're looking for extra health and stuff and ammo and all that. And that the energy saver weapon's okay, I suppose. I like the collection element of that, I suppose. To go back and replay the levels and whatnot was cool. And it's cool because, like, I think it's appealing in the sense that, you know, it's like, you don't know how to fight these bosses like you did. Like, the other ones, if you played the NES games, you kind of already had an idea of how to fight these bosses. These ones are new, so you have to, like, learn these all new bosses, what they do, what their weaknesses are, and, like, how to fight them. And, like, that was, I think, super exciting. The stages were like a lot of like new mechanics being thrown at you, and again, you had to like kind of like learn new things rather than rely on kind of knowing all the old elements and seeing them, you know, put in here in a different fashion. And you also had to learn how to use the new Mega Buster thing, which was like that was actually pretty interesting. I thought it made it a little more dynamic. So like it was a way to try to make it not so overpowered, and so it's a thing you're using constantly, but making it a thing that's still really strong and that you'll want to use effectively. I thought it was pretty interesting just to play around with that, especially once you get the upgrade to make it like grab items, and like the upgrade to make it like latch on enemies and hit them multiple times and stuff. Like it added it was a really fun addition, I guess, to how you would normally play these games. Also, there's new music in there. Some of that's cool. There's they still got the cutscenes thing going on for some of that stuff, and some story going on. And I feel like they pull a lot of stuff together in this one that they'd kind of been doing for the whole like Game Boy series. And also, it's a sort of a neat like nod and like a send off in a way to the Game Boy series, where it's like they brought back the Mega Man killers, which are those like new like sub bosses from like the other ones. And put them back in here as sub-bosses near the end, actually. I think that's cool. I thought that was like a nice nod, but also like it was fun to fight them again. And like it was just really... It was really interesting, I guess, to have something like that, and like it's celebrating not the NES games, but like the actual Game Boy Mega Man games instead. And so like, yeah, basically, yeah, a lot of these decisions I thought were really good decisions. I just didn't necessarily care for all of them. What I mean is, I still think it's, I don't know, I mean, there's plenty of little things that maybe seem nitpicky. Personal preference thing, I guess, I don't know, just what you're according to taste. I didn't think most of the new music was that great. A lot of it was kind of meh. There were some good tunes in there, but look, it has a lot of stiff competition with other Mega Man music, I understand, but like personally I just didn't really like a lot of that music anyway. If it was, you know, a lot of it was like okay and it was passable, but like it wasn't like awesome, and like that was kind of a shame. It just didn't seem as catchy to me. But I don't know, maybe playing it more times might change that, I'm not sure. And like the enemies, I guess, like in a lot of the game, or not games, a lot of the levels were like kind of hard to kill, I thought. Like without any upgrades to your Buster, you're basically like, you know, your charge shot will one-shot kill almost nothing without the upgrades. So it's like, well, a lot of times I ended up just not using my charge shot and just shooting them with a bunch of smaller shots instead, which made me like, you know, like not really want to use that mechanic until later when I got the upgrades and it was actually good, and then I could actually start using it. And that was cool. It was a way to balance it. I'm not super happy with the way it starts out with that. I'm not happy with the fact that you have to get a bunch of continues and then do that a second time in this one. I thought that was also really stupid. Also, the passwords, they have to save all your information. I understand why the passwords are the way that they are, but they're kind of long and annoying to write out. You have to like grit them out on a piece of paper, and it's annoying. They didn't really fully fix my issues with the whole P-chips and the lab situation, so that still feels kind of grindy. And I guess that was kind of the thing too. It's like with the way the enemies take so many hits, and the way that like you have to go back to levels to get new thing, like to get the secrets and check that stuff out, and the way that you have to get a bunch of P-chips to get all the stuff from the lab. Like, I don't know, like a lot of this ended up feeling like kind of long and grindy and kind of boring, more so than it felt like fun and like action packed. Like I feel like I got a little bogged down in that aspect. And I think it's weird there's not any collectibles in the first set of stages, but there are in the second. And I think it's kind of off-putting because if you don't find any of them your first time playing through those 4 levels, like if you don't find any of those, you're probably not even going to know that you have to collect those there. And you could totally miss out on them. Not that the thing you get for collecting them is that great, and you only get it for the last little bit of the game anyway, which is also like a little silly. But also Tango sucks. This robotic cat, like, I don't remember ever really using Tango. I mostly just used my own regular weapons for most of the game until it was like, maybe a few spots I used some special weapons, or maybe tried to, but Tango never really was that useful. And maybe I just didn't find the correct spot to utilize that thing. But, I don't know. Also just didn't really like Tango's design that much anyways, and it felt like a weird way to try to expand, to be like, oh, here's Tango. People like Rush because he was a robot dog. Let's make a robot cat. It's just like, yeah, I guess, but you need it needs to do something cool for me to be like, that's cool. I'm not just gonna like it because it's a robot cat. And so, I don't know, I guess my complaints generally stem from this idea that, like, while these are all really... Also, the cutscenes aren't as good as, like, the previous game. Like, those cutscenes, like, the art and animation and shit, the way that was done was awesome. And here it's a bit more talky, it doesn't look as nice. And so, like, I feel like this is kind of what everything was building towards with the Game Boy games, even though they probably weren't building towards it necessarily at the outset. But, like, as much as I respect a lot of this stuff, and I think it's really, those are really good decisions, it ends up kind of coming off pretty flat for a lot of it, for me anyways. Mega Man 5 it's Roman numeral 5, not number 5. It's one where I would highly recommend it to anyone who has already played through the Game Boy games for sure. Like I said, it does like all the stuff that like kind of like builds upon the ideas they established in the other Game Boy titles, and like they kind of have a nice nods to it and a nice send off to the Game Boy series, which is a little sad that like they were done with 8-bit Mega Man for a while after that, but like it's got a lot of interesting stuff. It's also probably the one that is easier to recommend to people who want to play a Game Boy Mega Man, or like want more 8-bit Mega Man, but don't want to play, like they don't want the bosses to be rehashed, which all of them are in the previous ones. This one has stuff where like the bosses are new, so like it's definitely a good experience on that account. But if you're going to do that, I guess you'd have to have already played the NES ones, I would imagine, so you wouldn't have to worry about it, And I even think it's almost a little charming in the way, like, this also, like, makes Mega Man 6 still feel kind of unique in that they didn't take, any of the bosses from that one at all. I don't know. Which I would have... I wouldn't have minded that at all. I love Mega Man 6. But, like, it makes that just a much more self-contained special thing because of it. So that's kind of neat. I don't know how much this goes for physically. I think it's, like, rare or something. On the 3DS, it's, like, $4 or $5, something like that. It's cheap, but physically, I don't know. I think it's maybe worth about $15. I don't think it's the best of the Game Boy titles at all, but I think that it's if you like the other ones, you'll also like this one. It's still fun. It's still more 8-bit Mega Man stuff, and like it's hard to be like don't get it if you're a Mega Man fan because you'll probably still like it. Just in case you guys have been sticking with me here through Mega Man Week this far, For a quick thing, I can go into more details. I'm not going to actually do a list on this, but I can go into more details on the comments if you want. My ratings for all 5 of these Game Boy games would probably be, my favorite was 4, and followed by 3, then Dr. Wily's Revenge, then 2, and this one would be at the bottom. And I can explain that more in the comments if you want. What are your favorites, or what's your ranking? You know, leave that in the comments of what you think of these and why. And we can have a fun discussion in the comments if you'd like. Otherwise, like I said, there's still that hubworldhq.com or the link in the description to go check out the written thing if you still want to, where I say things like this, but much better. And hopefully you enjoy the last few days of this Mega Man Week 2. Because there's still a little bit more, and I know it's a little bit different, but I think it's going to be a little bit awesome. Mega Man.